Hey there, entrepreneurs, and welcome to today's show. You are in for an exciting and interesting and educational and a whole lot more from this conversation. So let me welcome Marek Zamlovsky to the show, who is a Polish-born entrepreneur and executive focused on online business and renewable energy and passionate about, and this is a key here, folks, emerging markets. He's co-founded numerous startups and is the best-selling author of a book called, which I have to say is like one of the best titles I've come across in a while, Chasing Black Unicorns, How Building the Amazon of Africa Put Me on Interpol's, wait for it, folks, most wanted list. So Marek, thank you so much for being with me here today.
And thanks for the invite. Pleasure to be here. Hi, Michelle. Hi, everyone listening, watching, and so on.
I love it. So let's jump in, right? So your journey to getting on Interpol's most wanted list started by you taking a leadership role with a startup in Nigeria, which I know you weren't too familiar with that market, or hadn't been there a ton. So can you please set the stage for our listeners on what you walked into when you took on that role, like the 50,000-foot view? It's emerging market, politics, climate, all of that stuff. So set the stage for us.
Yeah, story of my life in 60 seconds. Born and raised in post-communist Poland. Didn't have much money. My parents were very, humble in terms of where they were coming from, a teacher and a soldier. But we had TV, and I could watch MTV, and I could watch CNN and Hollywood movies. So I had that dissonance between what I see outside my window in a small post-communist Poland in my small town, and then what I could see on TV. So I always wanted to just run away and have some kind of an international adventure. I ideally also while making money. So I got myself into startups because Poland then joined NATO and European Union. So I already had a passport and I could travel, not unlike my parents. And the moment I got the first chance to get hired by an international investment fund that would just send me anywhere. At that stage, I had no clue where they're going to send me. I was like, just take me on board. I'll do everything. I have nothing to lose. I wanna taste the world. And just by pure chance, it was Nigeria in my case. So I was sent there as part of the early management team or founders team, whatever you're going to call it. To start their businesses there, because this big investment fund wanted to build their own copy of Amazon. They could see how Amazon is successful in the US. They could see how Amazon is successful in China. And they were like, we've already done something like that in Europe. So let's now go after last Wild West Africa. And that's how I started working for this big firm and really being a hired manager that would not only work for salary, but also for some shares, just to keep me motivated and stay in that, in the end, very challenging, dangerous market.
Yeah. I mean, so tell us more about that part, because again, a lot of our listeners are in the States. There's a lot of myths about that market. So what did it look like when you walked into it?
Yeah. So when they told me, we're actually going to Nigeria, and I was like, Nigeria, what? So my first source of data, Google, of course. So all I could read is Nigeria is like, there's this Nigerian prince that wants your credit card, and there's Boko Haram. So a lot of terrorism. Not the best PR you could think of. But then at the same time, I knew that there were many misconceptions about Poland. Like people were asking me, can you guys still buy meat in the shops and so on, because of that post-communist PR, right?
Right.
So I figured if there's so many misconceptions and outdated data about Poland, it might be the same about Nigeria. So I started some digging and then read literature, and obviously I went there and I started traveling, and I've realized that, well, first of all, Africa is not a country. It's a continent of 54 countries. Every country is really divided into hundreds of ethnic groups that have a longer history sometimes than Europe itself. They were just divided differently because of colonization later and lost their identity and so on. But it's a vast continent. I mean, you fly from west to east 7 hours with a Boeing. Right. I don't know how long you fly from west to east in the US, but you can actually fit in China and Europe and US into Africa, and you're still going to have free space. It's a much bigger continent than what the maps tell you, because the maps are slightly disproportionate in that sense. And then you really see that, yes, it's a very poor continent, but this is just part of the picture. There's no such thing as third world yet, because even in rich countries, you have a very rich communities and you have very poor communities. And we read in the media or watch in the media, obviously, the kids with big bellies, because that's what the NGOs are pushing. But once you land in, you see that there's a middle class growing, and there's also a large community of rich people as well. And there are roads, and there are highways, and there's internet, and there are banks, and obviously you can't sell your product to everyone because of so many poor people. But there's already this growing middle class that you can, as an entrepreneur, you can sell your services to. But also you hope, and that's what every long-term investor hopes in Africa, is that by growing the middle class, you will also solve the poverty problems and so on. Like in Africa, especially, you can see the healthy aspect of capitalism. You know, the grassroots capitalism. You can see that there's a guy who used to have a shop on the street, and now he's running a supermarket. You obviously see also the negative aspects of corporation, corruption, and so on. But that visible aspect of grassroots capitalism that brings nations out of poverty was very visible for me, because I could also see that in Poland in the 90s. So
right.
For me, Nigeria was like Poland 20 years ago. Just the potential is 10 times 10 times. It's like by an order of magnitude higher. So for me, it wasn't that crazy to see the long-term future, positive future of Nigeria or Africa, because I could see that on a micro scale in Poland, that started
right.
as a very poor country, and then now is one of the strongest economies in Europe. Obviously, it's hard to compare. There's so many differences. Maybe I am naive in that sense, but that naivety back then helped me.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes that level of naivety gets you into the best situations. And I think because you get curious, right? Whereas I think when you're so focused on the like, well, we're the best, because hi, I'm in the US, that's the intends to be sometimes the mentality that folks over here may have, which, you know, that's fine. But I think when you lack the curiosity, you don't get exposed to emerging markets. You don't have a chance to look at and watch something grow, which must have been fucking amazing for you to see.
It's the most important thing which kept me in Africa now for almost 10 years, because I moved there end of 2012, which is that you know, the things change almost in front of your eyes, and literally everything you do has a real effect on the community you're building with. And again, I don't want, this might sound cheesy, this might sound too poetic, I'm not trying to romanticize capitalism, but it's just so valuable. When I ran my business, we became a big company with a couple thousand of people. We ended up doing an IPO, New York Stock Exchange and so on, and no one had to ever ask me about CSR, because the fact of opening the business there and hiring, I don't know, 100 IT developers and teaching them how to code was a CSR in itself, because if it wasn't for us investing in it, there was no other company that would do it. So it's that additional layer of, I'd say, satisfaction, just because you are bringing some more real change. In Europe, if I'm in IT, because I've been in IT for so many years in e-commerce, in online business, I would probably do an e-commerce number 200 in my own market. I would launch a mobile application number 5,000. And I would just compete for credit card data of another millennial that tries to kill his time when he's bored, right?
Yeah.
And you're solving more real problems there.
And
that's just cool. That's just cool.
Yeah, I mean, the ripple effect, like you said, the real problems. And I did watch your TED Talk about Africa and talking about that middle class growth, which is always really interesting, because you know, it's underestimated. And I think you're right. The trickle down effect is interesting, but it's when it starts to push upwards that people get pissed off, I think, on some levels, right? Do you agree with that? Somewhat. Yeah.
Could you give me an example where this is?
So, like, I mean, I think it's, you know, again, like we hear a lot about the 1%ers, right? Yeah. But when the middle class starts to bump up against the 1%ers, and there's a potential, I don't want to say threat, because that's a big word, but there's a lot of trickle down. But how do you view it as it goes upwards, like it bumps the ceiling between the classes?
So that's a good point. So again, context. I come from Poland, where because of communism, I mean, the Nazis kind of wiped out our intelligence, and then the communists from Russia basically nationalized all the wealth. So two generations back, before I was born, for me, I was raised in a world when the director of a school or any organization was making as much money as a teacher. For me, we all had the same amount of money.
Right,
like we all had the same amount of savings, which is nothing, right?
Right.
So for me, there was the concept of having generational wealth, and that the wealth gap was just so crazy. And I got exposed to it, to be very honest, for the first time in Nigeria, when I was like, how is that possible that there's this 1%? That I'm meeting with people whose names are on the streets I travel on, right? So I'm meeting this multi-generational wealth people. And then I would travel to India, and I've seen something the same. And I would travel to Southeast Asia. And in the end, I've learned something more, because I was such an ignorant when it comes to history, something more about the history of Western Europe, and then North America and Latin America. And I've realized that this classism is actually everywhere, which is a problem when it comes to inclusion, because, again, without getting too much into politics, part of keeping a nation wealthy is having access to cheap labor. I mean, look at Dominican Republic, where I'm staying currently right now. The fact that their direct neighbor is Haiti, which is one of the poorest countries in the world. I see the value for Dominican Republic by having access to cheap labor. When I look at South Africa in the second part of 20th century, basically built its own racism system, because apartheid was racism constitutionalized. I mean, Jim Crow was nothing compared to apartheid. They basically created those small countries within South Africa, so the Black community would be effectively a foreigner in their own country. So, so to sum up, the top 1% needs a poor society. But I think with the changes that are happening, with the huge masses of more and more aware bottom 99% of what is happening, this is not sustainable anymore. Look at all those riots and lootings which erupted in LA in the 92, and then lately because of Black Lives Matter, which I guess this is more or less connected. I don't want to get into that because I have not enough knowledge. I could see those riots suddenly becoming so big, at such a big scale, in a matter of hours. This is happening right now in South Africa as we speak. There's a 5,000 military on the streets, and there's already more than 20 shopping malls being burned down, simply because South Africa, you have a country of 60 million people, where 5 million people are considered middle class, and 55 million people are considered living below the poverty line. Again, I'm generalizing, but more or less.
Yeah.
You are already talking about numbers which cannot be contained the way it was contained in the Middle Ages. Right. So you need to increase the comfort of life for everyone, otherwise the poor will eat the rich.
Well, right. Especially with the equal, on some level, I don't want to say completely equal, but the opportunity to gain knowledge around stuff. I mean, hello, internet, and just, so many of the stories when you have Google or you have whatever at your fingertips, that is kind of an argument that I hear a lot is, you don't necessarily need to be stuck. You are surrounded by your circumstances, fine, but you have all this knowledge now that maybe was kept from you, to your point, years and years ago before. So, in some levels, if you are in that top echelon, that's a pretty big threat on some levels.
And there's also a double-edged sword when it comes to internet and social media. You have that free access to to knowledge, and I guess you can become yourself very educated in terms of how sometimes unfair the system is, and how little chances of success you have if you were born into the wrong community.
Right.
But also, like, we're living in a ecosystem of news that really can feed off your rage and even accelerate it.
Yes.
Because nothing sells clicks more than rage. So not only you're getting exposed to how the system works and maybe make you understand about about sometimes how unfair the system is, but also we're gonna get you furious very, very fast, and we're gonna make your worst instincts control you now. Right. And that's how riots erupt.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was working in tech, and just, the level, this was years ago, but, the level of data and potential manipulation that you could see just from a marketing perspective. And then you put that on steroids when it comes to leaders and countries and politics and all of that other stuff. And it's, that can definitely be a double-edged sword. And I like the fact that you said that, nothing sells clicks like anger and rage and those massive emotions. So that's a very, that itself could be a very interesting conversation on things.
Yeah. There's a lot of things happening right now in the world, and they're not going to go away.
No, they're not, because I think, again, we're dealing with humans and generations after generations of, challenges, deep-seated challenges, we'll say, that aren't going to go away. And I was just speaking to somebody the other day about, AI and all the rise up of that, and, somebody actually governing the emotional side of that and how humans get in the way and stuff when it comes to ego. But anyways, digressing on a lot of that. So take us to how the hell you ended up on Interpol's most wanted list, please.
Yeah, that's we have to finish that part of the story. So long story short, I was working for this big investment firm. We've launched 7 different ventures that we then later merged into one. That ended up doing the IPO in the States. And at some point I was like, I love Africa. I love what's happening here. I'm going to stay in Nigeria. And this time I'm going to invest or launch a business of my own. But I would love to have some local business partners who would maybe guide me still in what's happening in the market. Because in the end, I'm a foreigner who just has been here for a couple of years. I think at that stage, I was only 4 years into my journey into Africa. And something that is very usual, it happens quite often all over the world, is that sometimes you just don't choose your business partners wisely. You maybe haven't done enough audit, maybe you haven't get to know them properly. And what started as a pure communication issue about where to take the company, and my business partner was a very mature, close to a 60-year-old seasoned entrepreneur who has spent most of his life in emerging markets like Nigeria. And I was this very cocky entrepreneur, 20 couple years or something, who just did this big success because of the IPO. And I thought that I can do everything. And I was an asshole as well. But what I underestimated is that when you have someone that you don't necessarily like and you're used to doing business, and I guess I apologize for everyone to say this just as a joke, the Nigerian way, the Russian way, the emerging markets way, you will, bribing police is just another way to get rid of your competition, whether internal or external. Let's just put it this way. And in my particular case, my business partner decided to bribe the Nigerian police to issue an arrest warrant on me. And then I got an offer, listen, I don't want you in this business anymore. I want you to get out of my company. I'm going to do this now. And you're either now signing the papers and giving me back all your shares and you're getting the hell out of it, or I'm going to put you into jail and you're going to stay there for as long as it's needed until you change your mind. Basically, that was it. And long story short, I was still cocky and still very stubborn and decided to fight him. Although I had back then absolutely no clue how much this is going to cost me. Long story short, now I have to give you the context about Interpol, because probably not too many people in the US know what is Interpol and how is suddenly Nigeria conflict becomes an Interpol thing. Interpol is like Facebook for the police all over the world. It's a platform that every police all over the world, maybe besides North Korea and a couple of other small, strange countries, they all have access to it, and they can all share whatever is happening in their country. So any police station in Nigeria with access to internet to this Interpol, which is Facebook for police, they post this arrest warrant, and suddenly every other police, whenever you travel around the world, they know about it. Which, just like Facebook, in theory, it's a very great thing, right? Because you don't want someone to kill someone in Nigeria and then run away and have a normal life in Switzerland.
Right.
But just like Facebook and YouTube, there are sometimes problems when the scale is too high and people can post anything without any control. Like, let's say someone has posted naked photos of you, right? Yeah. And they're blackmailing you. Well, good luck going to YouTube and trying to get that person's IP or address to be able to sue them and so on. The bureaucracy is very problematic, and the systems are still a lot to work out. That's another story. So that's the problem with Interpol. It's so easy to put your name on Interpol, especially when you have influence in country like Nigeria, especially in countries like Iraq, Turkey, Afghanistan, And Interpol by definition treats an arrest warrant from Switzerland, Germany the same way as Nigeria. Just to bring an example, I think a couple months ago when Trump was still the president, and I think they killed some generals in Iran. Iran issued an arrest warrant after Trump, and they put it on the Interpol. It's the same mechanism, right? They just issued, and it was immediately Interpol.
Equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity.
Equal opportunity arrest warrants.
Exactly. So for a couple of days, Trump was technically one of the most wanted fugitives in the world, and it happened to me. Like, you could go to Interpol website, and my name was next to guys from ISIS that have been chased by the FBI or whatever. And this is designed at really destroying you financially, because everywhere I would travel, I would be stopped by the airport by default. It would take me days to explain myself. Hey, this is this thing in Nigeria. It's absolutely baseless because there was no evidence. There was no nothing. That information goes to banks. So all my credit scoring, all my credit lines, all my bank accounts are by default now frozen. It's designed, that bureaucracy is designed at destroying you financially. But I was stubborn, and I basically, because the story is getting too long, decided to do the FBI way, the Hollywood way. So I would go for meetings with that person to negotiate with him, saying, listen, let's do it the other way. You're really destroying my life. What else do you want from me, and so on. But I don't want to give you the company. So that person would become very comfortable and basically would admit to what he has done while I was recording him. And that piece of evidence, plus many, many other things, allowed me to win a case against Nigerian police in Nigeria federal court. So Nigeria is not that bad. You can still win cases in courts, even if there are some bad apples in the police.
Yeah.
And then I was able to appeal in the Interpol in France, because their headquarters is in France. It took 2 years, but in the end, they admitted that this shouldn't be published in the first place. And then I also had to defend my potential extradition request from Poland to Nigeria. And I also won this in Polish courts. So it all took 2 years and a lot of adventures in between. And because I always wanted to write a book, but this book was supposed to be about business in Africa, because no one writes proper business book about Africa. You could only, you read books about someone driving through the desert on his motorbike, or some Oxford professor analyzes the macroeconomics of Africa. But I wanted like a real business book. Which I always thought I'm going to write probably 20 years later. But this was such an important chapter of my life that also made the business much more interesting, because you ended up having a criminal story embedded in business.
Right.
That I've decided to do it earlier. And also on the personal level, it was a huge motivation for me to finish this whole case, that whole drama, with a happy end, because it required a lot of self-discipline. I had depression a couple times. I ran out of money a couple times because the lawyers' costs were actually bigger than the whole money that I would lose if I ended up agreeing for what the guy wanted from me. But that's another story.
Right.
That vision of being able to finish the drama with a happy end in order to write a book that has a happy end was extremely powerful motivation for me.
Yes, I mean, that's number one. That's a lot. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. Like, talk about resilience, right? So were you concerned, or did you experience, I mean, this could be one and the same, any blowback, I guess, across the industries? Because, I mean, you saw the blowback when they put you on Interpol's, list.
Yeah.
But after you kind of came out of that, I'm sure legally they didn't have much recourse, but did you feel any blowback once that was completed?
You mean like a damage on my image and business and everything?
Yeah, I mean, that, as well as the relationships, as well as, I mean, you were dealing with a seasoned entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I'm sure who had a foothold in a lot.
Yes.
Right. So whether it's through him or through something else, that type of blowback.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess I have to divide it into stages. First, obviously, when the whole thing erupts and my name gets into Interpol and so on, then short term, I got a huge blowback, basically hit when it comes to my businesses. I couldn't travel anymore. My bank accounts are frozen. I'm stuck. And many people are like, I mean, I say that, hey, I'm a victim here, but who will believe me? Like, just
it's a PR crisis. It's a PR crisis on a lot of levels.
PR crisis is big. Yeah. Then when I decided to go public, so I went to media saying, hey, look what's happening. This shouldn't be like this. I mean, there's injustice happening. So what do you do when injustice is happening? Your natural reaction is like shout. Like that's what animals do. Like when someone does something to you, shout. You want people to see. And I went to media and I went very loud about what is happening. And the unexpected, uncalculated backlash, and very painful for me, happened from my industry itself. Because here I was, this foreigner that came to Nigeria, made some money, and now he's, as it was quoted many times, I'm just quoting someone, shitting into his own nest. Because now I'm saying, hey, if you're a foreigner in Nigeria, this is what can happen to you. You can end up being on Interpol list. You can end up having your bank accounts frozen and being essentially wanted. Yeah. So I understand that many people from the industry, Nigerian entrepreneurs who were raising money from foreign investors, probably got some problems. Their foreign investor maybe back down. He said, no, listen, I got scared because of what happened, because my case became so widely known. And I got a lot of anger towards me for essentially in their minds hating on Nigeria. In my mind, I was a whistleblower. In their mind, I was this guy seeking attention, trying to spin the story and basically feeding of bad Nigerian image in order to protect his case. He's most likely the bad guy, or he wanted me to be the bad guy because it was in their own personal interest. And that was the most painful thing, because those were people who I didn't know personally, but I know of them. I mean, the IT sector in Africa is not that big.
Right.
And for their personal interest, they would either stay quiet or even attack me back for attacking Nigeria in their mind. And unfortunately, indirectly, they were defending the real fraudsters. So that was very painful for me, I have to say. In the long term, I guess, good awakening. But if I did this again, I would probably, maybe this is not the right conclusion from it, but I would probably think twice whether I should be that vocal about what's happening to you, because then you have to remember there are many people who would go after you, simply, not to defend the fraudsters, but because they're also defending their own personal interest, right?
Right.
So that was actually very painful, and that hurt me a lot. In the long term, when the thing finally happened and the book came out and the Interpol dropped the charges and admitted the mistake and so on, the fact that I wrote a book allowed me to, and that honesty that I really wrote about many things in the book, not only putting myself in the best light, a lot of people from networks, from circles I would never think of I would have access to, like CEOs of some big international companies. Like there's the CEO of one of the biggest telcos in Africa that actually invited me for coffee, and he told me his stories that happened very similar to mine that he could never speak publicly about, simply because he's still a very, very exposed position. So in the end, the fact of what happened to me and that I turned into a book and thank God ended with a happy end, turned me into a more seasoned entrepreneur, probably much less exposed to risk than I ever was. I'm very safe now in terms of what I want to, the risk I'm going after.
Of course.
In the long term, it helped my image because I was able to, I guess, grow from it. And I was lucky at all, like that I had the money to fight, that I won those cases, that then I decided to write a book, and I did not stop. Once I decided, no, I will fight this, I didn't stop at any point of time. And I think that's what saved me. That once I said, no, I'm gonna fight this the legal way, even if it's gonna cost me more money than what they wanted from me in the short term, it was worth it. If I stopped anywhere in between, I would probably end up much, much, much worse.
Right. I mean, and you alluded to kind of this good awakening that you had as you went through it, right? As oftentimes adversity does help us grow. And you've also said a couple times through this, like, that you were a jerk, like you were an asshole through a lot of that stuff. But I think that's part of youth as well. And I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs say that too. So, what do you think that was the biggest learning coming through, is kind of that awakening part of?
Oh, yeah. I really like Will Smith as an actor, and sometimes his videos or social media are cheesy, but he had a couple of cool quotes.
Yeah,
I remember once he said like the best advice in life he ever got was running and reading. Running because you set your mind to deal with adversity, and reading because 99% of your problems someone already had, and there's a high chance they wrote a book about it. And then I remember one of his videos saying there's a difference between responsibility and blame. It's always good to take responsibility for everything. It's healthy, not necessarily the blame. So I totally take the responsibility for what happened to me in Nigeria, because in the end, I was the cocky young guy that invited this old, maybe too dangerous business partner into your company. And then I pissed him off. I mean, how stupid is that, right?
Right. Not gonna lie, pretty stupid.
Yeah. I do not take the blame for him deciding to break the law to get what he wants, but I kind of led into this. And when I put the responsibility on me and myself, I'm not the victim anymore. Like if I was supposed to lie to myself that everything that happens to me in my life is my fault, or nothing is my fault, I think I prefer to lie to myself that all of it is my fault, because at least it gives me the control over changing this, right? Sometimes it's not my fault. Sometimes it's not my fault, but maybe 2 out of 10 times it's not my fault. But if at least 8 times it's my fault, then I'll be able to change it, because I lie to myself in the constructive way.
Right. And I mean, and to be completely blunt, if you had come on here and said to me like, "Oh, none of it's my fault. That guy sucks," I would probably called you out and kicked you off the podcast.
Yeah.
Because
like
there's always, I'm a big fan of saying like, there's 3 sides to everything, right? Like yours, mine, and the truth. And a lot of the stuff gets kind of mixed up between the people, and ego gets involved, and a lot of different things happen. So, I mean, it's wonderful to hear kind of that you had that awakening, and that you're still, I'm assuming that you're still learning when you look back, and that you still will be, 10 years from now.
I hope I will never stop. Yeah.
Right.
I hope I will never stop learning.
Exactly. So tell us what are you up to today? I mean, you're off the Interpol most wanted list. You're living a fantastic life with your really super cute pets in the Dominican Republic. So tell us what you're up to today, business, personal, anything you want to share with us.
Yeah, I moved to Dominican Republic during lockdown, and doesn't look like it's going away. And there are big problems happening right now in South Africa.
Right.
Why Dominican Republic? Because my girlfriend comes from here, so we had a house. My plan is to come back. The question is why. Well, now there's military on the streets in South Africa, and there are no vaccines, and so probably I'm still going to stay for a couple more months. But I don't complain. I'm really blessed to be here. When the book happened, so the book, which I released around 2 years ago, ended up being pretty successful. I must say, we published in English. Now it's coming out also in Spanish and other languages, because the original one was in Polish. That was like a year of my life, year and a half, when I was staycationing, or like half vacation. I was still recharging my batteries, not being ready to do business. And the book promotion was a way for me to mentally also close the chapter of my life and recharge my batteries.
Yeah.
And then I realized, I think it's time for a new adventure for me. So one of the realizations that I had is that, if you want to build something big, you have to stick to one business at least for 10 years. So I gave myself this, and I would always switch business every 3-4 years. Sometimes it was a smaller success, bigger. Sometimes it was just a bankruptcy, like it happens sometimes. But if you want to build something big, stick to 10 years. So I decided to really get myself out of comfort zone. So I changed sector. I decided to focus on solar industry, to change geography. So not only Africa, that was almost 10 years of my life, but now solar is mainly growing in Western Europe and United States because of the new regulations happening. I mean, obviously solar isn't in Africa because there's no other source of power, but not everyone can afford it yet. So it happens. It's not there yet. So geographically, it's also out of comfort zone for me. We're actually opening offices now in Austin and Miami.
Nice.
And then at least 10 years. So getting out of the comfort zone in terms of how long I want to stick to it until I build something big, geographical change, and sector change. All my life, I've been dealing with IT, with e-commerce, with finance, basically products that you cannot touch. Now I'm producing and installing something that is literally on top of my clients' heads. So because I'm also getting old, I'm 35 now, I guess that that refreshment and motivation to learn something new, I also hope keeps you younger, longer.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy with where I am right now. And again, if I was to live through Nigeria drama again, if someone told me like, do you want to start again, all over again, but my memory would be erased, I don't think I would go for this, because I'm really happy where I am, and I understand that I am where I am because of everything positive and negative that happened to me.
Yes.
So yeah,
yeah.
I'm going to put a dot here.
Thanks. Thank you for the segue. No, I mean, I think what you said is spot on, and I hear it over and over again from just people from all walks of life, is that there's, you fill your tool belt or your toolbox with whatever tools that you learn from good, bad, ugly situations, and then you keep moving forward. And it sounds like writing the book was quite cathartic for you, which is also a good thing, and a way to grieve and shut that down, right? That chapter.
This is the single most painful exercise of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I will ever give a birth to a child, but I'd say there's this and there's writing a book. It helped me so much on so many levels. Mentally, it was a psychotherapy in itself.
Right.
The discipline I had to get myself into and the skills I had to acquire to write this book, I am using now this every day. I mean, right. I'm writing better emails, messages to my employees, staff, and so on. The ability to put your thoughts into words on paper or in front of your screen monitor without pain, just creating that painless channel, yes, is a valuable skill in life. So writing anything, because I've written so much. And probably the book is like 20% of all I've written, but that 80% that was garbage brought me to that 20% that stayed. Is extremely valuable skill. And even if you're not planning to publish anything, just write. I think keeping the ability to write longer thoughts, structure your thoughts into coherent sentences is a very valuable thing in life.
Yeah. I mean, just from the ability to move things out of your mind and get them out and clear them out. But you're exactly right. As a leader, as anyone like that, the ability to be succinct and to deliver it in a manner that is actually heard, or read rather, is extremely important for anyone, entrepreneur or not, doesn't matter. All right. Well, you've left us with a lot to think about. And folks, this is like barely grazing the surface on what's in the book, folks, let me just say. So you definitely want to check that out. But, tell people where they can find you if they'd like to learn some more.
Yeah, my name is my website address, which was the worst decision of my life, looking at how do you pronounce my name. But the website also operates under the address of the book, which is easy to remember, chasingblackunicorns.com, just like the book, chasingblackunicorns.com. And this is like a one-stop shop for all my activity business-wise. You can also read about my charity, which we didn't get to mention. All the money from the book sales goes to the charity. We have a school in Nigeria, which we operate, support. And now the second one will be in Dominican Republic as well. And the book information and blog and social media, everything. Everyone needs to have a website now. Yeah. All the cool stuff.
Yeah. And thank you for plugging the charity, because we did not speak about that. But yes, folks, a lot of the proceeds are going to some wonderful things. So you'll want to check that out as well. And I will link all of this in case anybody is intimidated about spelling your name or cannot remember the name of the book. You will find it in the notes for this. And, Marek, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
It was a pleasure. Thanks so much, Michelle, for letting me share my story with your audience.